Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn about human rights in sports. This is an exciting day that will go all day. The panelists who you will be hearing are also part of the authors of an upcoming book on human rights and sports. Not all of the authors will be speaking today, but a few of them will be, and we encourage you to participate all day and to take a look at the book when it comes. So we want to thank everybody who's joining us today, and our IT, our speaker crew, and all of the attendees. We will be talking for 45 minutes for our presentations, and then we will take a short break as you prepare for the next presentation. Sport is a human rights issue. It is part of the movement toward global peace, toward international collaboration, and it is also a political issue. We can see the human rights played out in competition, in inequality, in segregation and discrimination, in abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional, or financial. There are all kinds of injuries occurring, and sport has turned into a big business. So we are talking about the ultimate development of an athlete's Bill of Rights to protect everyone. It is my pleasure today to invite our first speakers. We have two speakers coming in from the universities in Malaysia. We have Meng Kwan and Zaid Hasim, and they'll be talking about governance in the socio-cultural role of sports. And they will be our first speakers for today to kick us off. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. Actually, I'm basically, there won't be two speakers. It'll be primarily me, because now is fasting month. So Professor Jadi is breaking his fast now. So he told me he might just listen in. He's having a fast breaking of fast session now. But he may just join later. I don't know yet. But anyway, basically, I'll be the one presenting first. Okay. If that's all right with you all.
Yes.
Yeah. So he.
Yes.
You can see now.
Yes.
Okay. So can I talk now? I cannot see the audio. You guys, is it all right? It's a whole screen now, right?
Yes, that would be fine.
Yeah. Okay. This will be this is the paper which I have submitted for your book chapters. So it's actually co-authored by me and Jadi Hashim. This topic we have chosen is about governance in the socio-cultural role of sports. Let me sort of change to. Hang on. I'm trying to change to. Oh, the slide. Hang on. I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, so when you talk about sports, actually, sports has the power to provide a framework for learning values that can contribute to the development of soft skills needed for a responsible season. Most of us think of sports as an elite and high performance, but actually there is the other dimension of sports, that it is about developing skills and the individual. So this is where the social-cultural element of sports come in. And you see, sports have contribution of sports to society comes in two ways. It can be positive, it can be negative. So these are the possible, I mean, these are all what I have listed for the presentation, but basically, there's a lot more to it than this positive thing. So when you look at sports, there is both the elite sports are more on the extrinsic part dimension, whereas the socio-cultural dimension of sports is more on the developmental, which is intrinsic. So in this development aspects of socio-cultural dimension of sport, there is so many areas, developmental areas, positive, constructive, human, character development, human value, intrinsic satisfaction. Whereas the elite, you have it concerns about fair play, excellence, performance, equity to excel, aim at winning, monetary returns, and then pursuit of and then pursuit of titles. The titles also have a winner and medals and so on. You see. So actually, sports has a very broad spectrum and it's multidisciplinary. It covers so many sciences, as well as it has a very broad-based spectrum. So as you see, it covers so many areas. Some of it, most of it we know is the elite and professional worlds. There are so many human values, governance, and psychology, so many things. So it's not just about competitions and professional sport as what most people think. See, so there is in my literature I found that there are several definitions of sports. It can be very narrow, which cited by the Council of Europe Sports Charter, in a sense that narrow, in the sense that it looks more on the physical element, activity, physical well-being, and so on. Whereas in the broader definition of sport, it goes into business enterprise, athletics, recreation, leisure, and it's also physical activities that can involve challenges or competitive contests. So there is this definition literature I found of sports by Stephanie, which differs from the other definition, which categorize sports into 4 categories, such as sports competition sets of rules. This is what most of us know. There are also mind sports requiring intellectual prowess and skill. These are which sports to do with maybe sports like chess, bridge, and so on, where there's no physical element in sports. Well, there's also elements of and then the physical sport are those which require physical prowess and skill, which are psychomotor, and then of using a physical object. Whereas now we have virtual sports, or we call it esports, which can be similar to physical sports but played virtually online, see, or using a social technological platform. And then, okay, we have, both of us have actually conceptualized the whole sports ecosystem, which comprise so many areas, so many levels, you see. The sports segment, the support segment, industry, governance, legislation, education. So what most of us know about sports is where the sports segment are, the events, the activities, and so on. See, so these are where you see a lot of abuse of sports, or the negative aspects of sport, such as match rigging, betting, risk-taking, gambling, and so on. Well, in the stakeholders are those competitors as well as the field officials, you see. So it can go into doping, violence, race and gender discrimination, overtraining, and so on. Then you have the outer level of support comes from the sports merchandise, products, media broadcasting, sports engineering, technology, and then the outer layer in this ecosystem is the governance, policies, administration, sports education, training. So when you talk about sports, it's not just about activities. It has this whole spectrum, you see, an ecosystem, which makes up the whole business of sports. So from those whole system of sports, there is this, when it comes to sports development, we go into a smaller segment where sports development starts from play, children's play, where you instill sports values and so on. So then it goes into recreational sports, sports or physical education and so on. And then the higher level of sports development is elite, high performance, and of course, the minority will go into professional sports. So when you look at sports, the recreational part is where the developmental base are, else and they are more in the leisure context. So it can be voluntary and so on. Else the elite are considered work, is no longer recreation, because these athletes are training full-time and they are even earning allowances and income. So on the right-hand side of this model, you see where the socio-cultural elements of sports are. The values, the well-being, where they are built up. And of course, normally at the lower level, the negative elements of social culture of sports is not so prevalent. Most of it comes at the upper level because of the interest for winning, for monetary element returns and so on. So this is where you find that those elite sports are where a lot of socio-cultural problems arise. And then just some definitions of what culture is. Since this is about social culture, it's about mediating role, influencing actors, thinking, feeling, believing, valuing, productive structures, structure of exclusion and inclusion. So these are some of the contexts of what culture is. And from here, you can relate to what sports is about. Right? What happened? Okay. So sports culture is therefore the systematic factor, formative factor involving sports values and individual. It includes the physical culture that emanates from intrinsic process of the cultural and educational potential, values, sports, and individual activity, discovery of human consciousness, physical and activity. So the structure of sports culture that relates to personality and social values. It also is about psychological and social culture. It's a holistic form to seek both excellence and health, and the spirit of personality and value formation are actually the fundamental level to the elements of activity in sports culture. So this definition can mean everything, every learn and do that has sources in sport. This is from Professor Jadi Hashim's book. And then from the other book, sports culture can be categorized as material culture, or tangible objects, or non-material and additional culture. So the context of sports in Malaysia, they have defined sports culture in the index as developed by the Youth Research Institute of Malaysia. Sorry. It is about active recreational sports activities, exercise, active recreational activities that become practices and routines towards active, fit, competitive, and self-initiated lifestyle. So the role of sports culture then is the integration of cultural norms, values, beliefs, customs, language, symbols, attitudes in the socio-cultural practices of sports and the athletes within the bond of ecosystem of sports and the development continuum from foundation level to the elite and professional levels, as demonstrated in the sports pyramid earlier, and encompass the whole various broad socio-cultural issues in the sporting world and their fraternity. So at the elite and professional levels, sports culture, sports governance is articulated by the sports governing bodies through rules and regulations and well-defined boundaries, while the socio-cultural dimension, it is not so tangible, it's rather opaque, intangible, subjective. It is addressed through instilling social values and ethical practices to negate the negative elements of sports. And it's also to enhance the socio-cultural, also sports governance is also to enhance the socio-cultural values of sports. So when you so these are some of the legislative policies and that promote sports social culture. It can be in terms of governance by some of these government agencies, FISPT, WADA on drugs and so on. So you see, they come out with policies that govern sports culture. So these are some of the bodies. Governance must go with policies and regulations. So IOC also have their own policies and so on. Even though there are a lot on elite sports, such as promoting sports ethics, youth education, sports fair play, and so on. So these are this is a comparison of the governance body of sports, which is translated into policies. And as for the social-cultural aspects dimension, the governance is more through delivery of quality, through the quality and delivery of experience of the athletes. That's why they are very subjective and intrinsic, because it's not so visible to the layman, to the spectators. Indirect governance can be through the learning of skills, character values, conformity, persistence, risk-taking, or anything. And therefore, in the social-cultural dimension of sport, governance is not so much about rules, but through structural factors that can lead to positive developmental outcomes. So, through sports, so I have come up with this argument through sports. So such sport activity in the social-cultural dimension should be fun, educational, and entertaining, and enjoyable, that contributes to these goals, which I came up with acronym PLACES: passion, love, adventure, challenge, commitment, excitement, excellence, and that instills self-esteem and self-actualization. So to conclude, the governance of the social culture in sport should be flexible and adaptable. Rigid rules and regulation may not be appropriate, as they are more behavioral and subjective. Rules and regulations should be based more on personal experience. Rigid rules and regulations can be counterproductive and lead to negative outcomes. It is the delivery and the outcome that matter, not the sport or participant. Governance starts with sports engagements that are education and cultural and inculcation of sports values and ethics. The future is on organizational change, change in governance structure, behavior and attitudes towards sports, and adoption of new practices and policies. So this is a table that compares the two dimensions of sports. Socio-cultural governance, all that thing. So it's you can see the comparison, the different types of elements. So at the foundation level, development of governance is about inculcation of sports and cultural values. So that's all from me, or rather both of us. And thank you everyone for your kind attention.
Professor, you have done a wonderful job of giving us the beginning context for the day.
Thank you.
Your diagram on the multiple levels of which sports impacts our individual lives is really quite brilliant. And so I thank you so very much for that. I will encourage people to put questions into the chat or into the Q&A box so that we can pose them to the professor. But I think that your presentation was excellent to start our day. You talked about the many benefits of sports, both the intrinsic and extrinsic ones. And we know that sports are very good for people. The diagram you had of it being multidisciplinary, I think that is a very important one for people to remember, because sport does impact virtually every field of study and part of our life, from politics to economy to psychology, philosophy, geography. All of these fields really have an interest in sport, but we have not actually developed this interdisciplinary work very well. And I think that you point out that it is a challenge for the academy to start to develop this kind of conceptual framework, and indeed a pedagogy of how do we teach other people about human rights and sports. That you have given us this narrow versus broad definition of sport. I wondered, which do you think is the better, a broad definition of sport or a narrow one?
Depends on what you want to use sports for. What's the purpose of sports to you? You see, most people only concerned about the activity, especially those elite and professional area. They don't care about the other aspects of sports. So if you are looking at sports from a broader spectrum, then you take the broader definition. But if you are concerned about sports in the more the activity, the tournaments, competition, performance part, then you go for the narrow one. Depends on how you plan to utilize sports, what purpose of sports is to you. Is that clear enough?
Yes. It's a curious thing because, as you point out, you've got all of these different levels and types of sports. And when you were talking about mind sports and the e-sports, what you're teaching us is that there's this whole other dimension of what sport has become. It's not just football or baseball or gymnastics. Yeah. It is now including a lot of online machinations. And so I wondered, what do you see to be the future of the esports and these kind of gaming sports?
To me, it's okay. I just go back to my sports. Why I initially I had it challenged my mind about my sports because most of the sports definition is about physical activity, but if you notice in the sports scenario lately, they have included they have recognized chess, bridge, and so on. Incorporate into the element of sport. So that's why the definition is relevant. And as for esports, frankly, I'm not that much of a fan on esports because I feel that it's too commercialized. It's more of business and commercialization rather than really sports. And of course, in the paper, I couldn't elaborate. There have been studies, physical studies, that found that esports can affect the function of the hand and the palms. A lot of there have been many cases of players having lifelong injuries on their fingers now. So there's a lot of risk there, but then it's never highlighted by the media because of all these commercial interests. But in terms of physical elements, I don't see much of it actually. It's fun, yes, but what happened is now in the scene is that it's too commercialized. It's more business rather than really the development of the individual through sports.
That's a great answer, and I want to pick up on it in a minute, but we have a question posed for you. And the person says, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I am wondering, in the era of escalating social isolation and mental health epidemics, how can sports create positive connections for children and mitigate some of the trends of loneliness?
Okay. In that context, I will look at sports more of a fun and play activity in that context where children is concerned. I'm not very comfortable when I see children being pushed hard to excel in sports. I have come across readings and examples of where this one we don't see in the media, but it came out in YouTube, some cases that, some children, they start sports at a very young age, 6, 7 years old, or even below that. So they were pushed into training until their growth were sort of curtailed. They couldn't grow properly as an adult. So this is where the coaches and the officials should take note of the mental health of sports. And overtraining, over competition is definitely negative. Sports should be, they shouldn't be pushing the athletes too much. Even here, we have our badminton players who are lately complaining about not being able to excel because they were burnt out. So the same with children. You let them play, let them enjoy sports, then they will slowly develop at their own pace. They shouldn't be pushed too much. So when you over push them, then it can have a negative effect rather than positive. We shouldn't generalize all athletes, all players. That okay, we want to excel, these are the targets you meet. Then you push them to that, but not everybody can deal with it. Different people have their own pace of development. So these officials and coaches should be mindful of that.
I have seen some data that indicate that when children are very little, their parents expose them to lots of different kind of sport because they want them to learn how to use their body, how to become a team player and get along with others. But by the time they hit adolescent or young teenage years, that most of them don't want to engage in sport anymore. Or if they do, they pick one sport and they put all of their energy into that, which increases competition. And so I wonder what is going on within the sport community, that you have a lot of children who are really excited to use their body and play sport, but then they decide not to participate anymore, and then they become spectators instead of participants.
In that sense, you see, every individual has a own interest, and then each children, not every children like sports, so they play for fun, and then at a certain stage of their life, it may not be for them. You see, I come from a recreational background. You have to look at sports from the recreational context. So some people may not be attuned to sport. They may prefer to go into the arts, children. So if you want the children to excel in sports, you have to let them grow and then play and then learn to enjoy themselves. And then it's very difficult to say which sports suit the children. As they grow up, they change. For example, I think probably you all heard of Nico David, our Malaysian sports champion. You know, she actually did not start squash at a young age. She was into something else. It was the sister who got her interested, but instead she was the one who excelled. You see, so let them play, let them choose what they want, and then if they want to go elite, let them go. It's no point trying to dictate to them what they want, how they want to play. You see, so you see, it's very individualistic. It's very difficult, not easy to predict. You see, I see Nico David as one example. This one, I read her story. You know, she wasn't into squash in the beginning. It was the sister. You see, but the sister did not excel. She's the one who excelled after that. You see. So it's very difficult to say, and so coaches must be mindful of each individual capability, not to just one shoe fits all. This is what I want. You pursue that. No. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Professor. There's another question for you, and this is: my comment goes to mental health, and you address that pushing students from all levels. From my perspective, the pushing of children is more likened to being coercive. From a domestic violence position, pushing children into sport could be considered a crime. Could I have your thoughts on this?
Okay. I'm not so much into that, whether it's a crime or not. But to me, pushing is not right. I mean, not maybe many people will disagree with me. You need to push, you know, you won't excel, but on the other hand, there must be a limit how you push. But there is always a borderline where you should know when you should stop pushing. You see, so different athlete has different boundaries. Okay. I would look at it like, you know, everybody is like a sort of a rubber band. Okay, so as the more you push at a certain point, the rubber band will break. You know, some will break earlier, some will break later. Okay, so you must know how far that athlete can stretch mentally and physically. You see. And as I put there in the second slide, that it must be fun. If you push too much, it's no longer fun. Then that's where the mental health can come in. Really, you know, if they stop enjoying playing sports, then that is where the indicators are that if you push further, then you're going to be in trouble. How we are going to assess that, I don't have the mechanism yet. I'm not going into that mental health issue, but maybe some of the researchers can explore that. You see, how to assess that bar, how much an athlete can be pushed mentally and physically.
Well, this is a very interesting question, I think, because you have a person who likes to play sport and that they want to be successful. On the other hand, you have an organization that is in charge of the sport. And when we talk about sport being big business, they want to see that athlete be more competitive, and they push on that athlete to be using their body more, to be more successful, to the point that they could be injured or manipulated. And so while sports support is supposed to be fun from an individual level, from a business level, the enjoyment is not a concern of the organization. It's making money.
That is why, you see, that is why I decided to choose this title for your paper, the socio-cultural element, because most of the time people see that element, but you need to, in a sports development, dealing with, you must cover both elements. It's like two sides of a coin. You only see one side, you don't see the other side. So there must be a balance, you see? So if a sports developer, leaders can look at this balance of, it's always a challenge where the commercial interests and the development interests come in. Where do you draw the line? Okay, most of the time the commercial interest takes precedence, overrides the other part. So that is why maybe sports academics like us or those sports leaders should look at the other side of sports as well. Don't just focus on one, only thinking of the money and the titles and the glamour, you see. So forgetting about the values, the development of the individual through sports, you see. I'd like to give another example about sports development in Malaysia. In the past, before all these commercial sports come in, we had Malaysia, for example, I hope Malaysian athletes are government officials. We have very good players among our football team. And those days, they don't have all these rewards, financial rewards and so on. And they excel. But now, our standards have gone down despite all the prizes, all the support, sports science given to them. You see? So you see, those players in the past, despite without the rewards, they play and they excel because they love the sports. So you see, they have the cultural, the social developmental values of sport instilled in them, and they excel. But now when you give them so much money, the standard went down. I don't know about Western country, may be different, but this is examples which I see here. When I look at some of our sports heroes before, athletes, they play voluntarily. There's no incentive for them to win, and they excel. But now with all the incentive, they couldn't make it.
Right. Thank you. You have another question from a professor in Wales, and to compound upon this issue, when money is exchanged based on the child's capacity in sport, do we infringe upon the optional protocol for the sale of children? So could you speak to that?
Sale of, what is it? Sale of children? Can you repeat that part about sale of children? What do you mean by that? I don't get that part.
Convention on the Rights of the Child, Human Rights Treaty has an optional protocol forbidding the sale of children. And so you could even see it, I guess, in a broader way for professional sports teams where a player is kind of bought and sold to another team for a high amount of money. So that the team can succeed more. So there is this movement of trying to recruit children to be involved, or athletes of any age to be involved in sport as a money-making strategy for the business. So I think the question pertains to, is that a form of sale? Instead of honoring the integrity and dignity of the athlete.
Okay, in that context, I see that happening in professional sports. Okay, but then the athletes at that level are already elite. They know what they want. They're already matured. But to do that with children who are still ignorant, who are still growing, I think is pretty bad. I don't agree with that. You know, although at the elite level, at the professional, especially at the professional level, you see they sell and buy players like commodities. So well, for commercial reasons, it's difficult for me to comment further socio-culturally, but I mean, looking at the socio-cultural aspects, dimension of sports, I don't particularly agree with that. But then, anyway, it's also two hands clap lah. So at that level, you know, the players also, okay, you offer, which team offer me more, I'll take it, I'll go. So it's all right, they understand. But when it comes to children, it shouldn't be. I think that's gone too far, across the line.
Would
But
you
it's up to
say,
the, yeah.
would you say that there's a lot of manipulation of athletes to perform, not for their benefit, but for the benefit of the sport organization?
In a way, yes. You see, for example, Formula One, okay, motorsport. You know, how many races they already have? 20 over races per year, per season. And I just read a few days ago, after the latest Formula One race, that they are planning to increase to nearly 30 races in a year, in a season. Well, it's not only the taxing on the players, what about the staff, the officials, the team members? Where are they going to get a break? And this is not just in one place, they are traveling all over the world. You see?
We have one more comment and then our
Okay.
time is up. And so the comment is, as the child becomes chattel, culturally, we have accepted this due to the money aspect. However, we have crossed the line in many avenues due to being manipulated for the benefit of the sport organizations and the adults involved who look to ensure the child's interests are protected. So here we are at the beginning of a day talking about human rights in sport and the need to develop bills of rights to protect athletes. And it may be difficult to do when sport organizations have a different agenda. What you have provided for us today is an excellent diagram of the sport ecosystem, and that it will guide us through the day. Thank you so very much, Professor. Thank you for all the participants. And if you would like to be in touch with the professor, we can make the contact for you.
Can I just add one more point? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Talking about what you're saying about all these things, about recently our Youth and Sports Ministry just introduced a Safe Sport Code of Conduct. to regulate the exploitation, like sexual harassment, cyberbullying, and so on now. So they get all the sports officials and government officials to sign that code of conduct. If anybody breaks the conduct, they can be, action can be taken against them. And it's already started already. So a few cases after they sign, even then, there are a couple of cases already. So maybe this can be one measure, conduct on safe sports, which our government recently introduced in the Ministry of Youth and Sports.
I think that's a good place for us to leave. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I appreciate you all. We'll take a few minutes break and then we will be moving into our next presentation at the hour on Paralympic treatment with Jonathan Moss. Okay, so we're going to take a few minutes break. Thank you very much.
Okay.